Welcome to Three Count Commentaries. Let's talk about WWE's Most Wanted Treasures, Booker T. We got a double dip of Booker T on Mother's Day. It was pretty cool. So we talked about there was three things they were looking for. The WCW television title, which they said will cost about $20,000 to $25,000. Booker T's black robe, the only other robe that he's ever worn. Every robe that he wore was essentially the same robe, and it is currently in the WWE warehouse. But this black robe was his SummerSlam 2007 robe, which was also the last time he wrestled as King Booker in WWE. This robe is worth $2,000 to $6,000. And the Junkyard Dog's dog collar, which they believed was somewhere between $4,500 and $8,000. So they brought in Booker T to do this. And of course they did some interesting stuff where they talked about, different things about Booker T, and Triple H gave him credit for his ability to adapt and to be able to do different things. There was a lot of talk about my representation in this episode. I'm not going to go through any of that. So AJ Francis and Booker T went to go see David Chuddy, the same guy that they went to in episode 1, who refused to give up a piece of Mick Foley memorabilia. David Chuddy, they went back to him, and he did it again. So Chuddy had the Booker T robe, the King Booker robe. He also had a Kamala mask, which was very cool. They took it some time to talk about Kamala. Not really to talk about Kamala, but basically to talk about, some black guys had to do stereotypes. And King Booker was the first time a black guy didn't get to have to do a stereotype. Look, Kamala was successful. It wasn't a stereotype, There are, like I said, when I did a video on Kamala after when he passed away, I said that there are some people who are ashamed of African societies. I've studied African societies. They will do that stuff in modern day. They dress up like that for, dance ceremonies and stuff like that. They're not ashamed of it. It's only black people in America who are ashamed of stuff like Kamala. I don't see why they would be. It's no different than an Asian man choosing to be a ninja, or because that's his culture, or, anybody choosing to participate in anything that might be quote unquote stereotypical, like a white man being a Viking. Like, could you imagine somebody seeing John Nord, the berserker, and saying, some white guys just have to be stereotypes. Like, it's so unfair that we have to be Vikings. It's like, no, they don't care about being Vikings. So why do you care about, being, African warriors? They're proud. African warriors are proud of being African warriors. I went off into the weeds. I'm so sorry. Anyway, Chuddy had the King Booker robe. And Booker T talked about, he looked at himself in the mirror while wearing it and said that, hey, a student made this for him. And he was just going down memory lane about this robe, man. And Triple H claims that he didn't think the match was very good because he had a summer flu, which is very strange. So they offered Chuddy a replacement. Instead of just offering him money, they offered him a replacement right off the rip because they knew how he was. So they brought a Queen Charmel dress, her red dress, and offered him $2,500. Chuddy said no. When he gives up something that belongs to a specific talent, he wants something back from that same talent. So then Booker T offers him his NWO tights that he wore one time. For 1 week, he wore NWO tights because he was only in NWO for a week. And the dress and $2,500. Chuddy still said no. And then Booker T says, okay, what would it take? What would it take for you to give me this robe? This motherfucker says $10,000 plus everything. Basically the dress, the tights, and 10 grand. The next scene, they were doing something else. The very next scene, they were in the car. I was like, that was such a a great twist that they didn't bother saying no. They just was like, you know what? Edit. Hard edit. The very next scene, they were in the car. So Booker T called Stone Cold Steve Austin. Then of course, they went through the whole Booker T and Stone Cold and being best buds and fighting in the grocery store. And they also talked about the WCW television title because it was the first title either one of them ever owned. You know, Steve Austin won the title, I believe, in 1991. Booker T won it in 1997. And they're both looking for it. Well, Steve Austin's not going on the trip to look for the WCW television belt. But he really wants it too. He thought, you know, it's pretty cool that, you know, it's a belt they have in common. So Book needs Austin to help with Chuddy. So in Chuddy's hoarder space, he had a one-of-a-kind Stone Cold Steve Austin cooler. And knowing that everybody's a fan of Stone Cold Steve Austin, Booker adds that to the list. He says, okay, he calls Chuddy via Skype or Zoom or whatever, and says, okay, a conversation with Stone Cold Steve Austin, will that seal the deal? And Chuddy says, yes, absolutely. Booker T gives the computer to Stone Cold Steve Austin, who gave him a hell yeah. And then Chuddy was like, oh man, I went to one show, the first show I ever went to. You were in the main event with Sid. And it was the first show at the Continental Airlines Arena, I believe. And Steve Austin was just standing there smiling like, okay, I don't remember that, but okay. I certainly don't remember Steve Austin and Sid ever having a singles match. I probably need to chase that down. Anyway, Steve Austin thanked him for his help and said, I'm going to give you this dang on hat right off the top of my dang on head. And then Chuddy was so excited. So they made the trade for the robe. Chuddy got a Skype call with Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Booker T NWO trunks, Charmel's gown, red gown, and Booker T's hat for the King Booker black robe. I said, personally, Steve Austin should have run this son of a bitch over with the ATV. Now, Chuddy's a hell of a businessman. Anything I say about him is not personal. It's jokes. He's a hell of a businessman. This guy needs to be negotiating wrestler contracts, right? He needs to be doing something on a major scale because that motherfucker is serious about his memorabilia. He always gets out more than he gives. I swear I wouldn't have done this. If I was Booker T, I would have been like, man, look, we, When he said $10,000, we should have been like, we can't find it. Can't find it, dog. Anyway, they moved on to the WCW Television Championship in 1997. They showed clips and Booker T told the story. He was supposed to win the WCW Television title in 1997. Rick Martel was supposed to win it, but Rick Martel forgot his boots. And because he was not prepared to wrestle, Booker T had to fill in. So Booker T ended up beating the Disco Inferno, winning the WCW television title. And Booker T says, like, hey, this belt means a lot to me because it helped people see me as a single star and it really got some steam behind me. I really would like to find it. So they didn't know where to go, but they said, you know, the last person to hold the belt was Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hacksaw Jim Duggan sold the belt to some guy in Florida 20 some odd years ago. So they went to the biggest belt collector they could find, who lives in Florida, and it ended up being Dan Lambert. Dan Lambert, the founder of American Top Team, the MMA guy. He's also featured heavily on MLW. Lambert's a multimillionaire, and they went to his house in, I believe it was Tampa. Was it Tampa or Fort Lauderdale? And he had this tremendous place. And inside his house, he had nothing but actual belts, no replicas. They asked him, they said, how many of these is replicas? He said, there are 0 replicas. And Lambert basically talked about how much he loved pro wrestling. And that, you know, and he just had this wall of championships. He had Hulk Hogan's very first world title in there. That joint is absolutely, I can't believe they don't want that. Like, can you believe that they don't want Hulk Hogan's first world title? They're going to get that belt from Lambert. They're probably going to wait for him to die and they're going to get it. Anyway, Lambert had a WCW television title, But it was actually a WCW television title, I believe, from the NWA days. And it was before, it wasn't the actual one Booker T had won. So Lambert says, look, there's not a lot of people who have these titles. It's not a big community because these belts are some of the most higher end of these products. You know, these belts are worth 5 figures, you know. And he's like, it's not a lot of people. I couldn't tell you where it is. I don't even know anybody who has it. And so they were kind of stuck like, hey, I don't know where it is. You know, we don't know where the WCW television championship is. So they kind of said, okay, we hit a dead end there. So they moved on to the Junkyard Dog's dog collar. So then they called up Teddy Long. They went down to Atlanta and they chilled out with Teddy Long. They talked about my representation some more. And then they said that Teddy Long was, one of the pioneers. And they talked about how great the Junkyard Dog is. And then they asked about his dog collar. And Teddy Long said he's going to call around and, you know, with his contacts, he might be able to find it. And Teddy Long suggested that they go to Illinois to see this guy named Vito Tomaselli, who is apparently a former pro wrestler himself. And from the clip that they showed, I think he wrestled in ECW. So, because I remember the voice, the voice of the ring announcer who says, the Tomaselli brothers. It sounded like ECW. Anyway, this guy was a big fan. He has a super collector. And he actually had JYD's dog collar. And he talked about how, you know, his grandfather had it. And, you know, he don't know how his grandfather got it because his grandfather was dead before, you know, he really became in possession of it. But he kept it with him his whole career. It's kind of like a good luck charm, kind of like a family heirloom thing. It wasn't the chain, but the collar. And then they all kind of they talk about the Junkyard Dog. They do a little Junkyard Dog dance or whatever. And then they asked him straight up, how much would it take to get this dog collar from you? Tomaselli says $20,000. He says $20,000. I was like, what the hell? AJ offered him $4,500. Tomaselli was like, no, I can't do it. And then he says, okay, the highest I'm authorized to do is $7,000. Tomaselli said no. He was like, all right, I'm already over budget. I should have to make a call, but I'm going to just shoot my move right now. $7,500. And Tomaselli was like, okay, all right. So he went from $20,000 down to $7,500. Whatever. Anyway, they ended up selling the dog collar. Now, the dog collar is very, very interesting. I don't know how many dog collars Junkyard Dog actually had, but famously, Junkyard Dog, of course, wore the dog collar all through Mid-South. I think he only had the one. I think he might only had the one dog collar. But the dog collar became especially important to the Junkyard Dog during the angle in 1980. He did an angle in 1980 where he was wrestling the Fabulous Freebirds. And he had did a story where he was going to shave Michael Hayes' head. And Bill Watts, being overthinking things as usual, decided to come up with this concept of the Freebird hair removal cream. So he did the free hair. They was trying to, after JYD beat Michael Hayes, the other two Freebirds interfered in the hair removal, and they ended up getting the cream in the Junkyard Dog's eyes. And this led to the blinding angle of the Junkyard Dog, where they say, oh, the Junkyard Dog is blind, his career is going to be over. And then, of course, they milked it. And then the Junkyard Dog's going to wrestle one last match to, you know. And in order to help him win this match, it was going to be a dog collar match. August the 2nd, 1980, in the Superdome in New Orleans, 2,600 people. The gate was $183,000. Their undercard match was Dusty Rhodes and Buck Robley versus Buddy Roberts and Terry Gordy in a double bull rope match. So you had the Freebirds in both main events, and they scored pretty big. But the reason why the dog collar became, you know, one of the really reasons why it became a big deal is because he could use it in his very special dog collar match that kind of became his staple, you know. So the dog collar is very important to the legend of Junkyard Dog, and therefore it is very important to the legend of wrestling. And I am also reading the book on the Greg Klein book on New Orleans, the New Orleans territory, which is Mid-South Wrestling. So I'm also reading the book. That's where I got all that information from, by the way. This was a very fun episode of Treasures. And they did not find the WCW television title. They will continue to look for it, but they were not able to find it at the moment. I hope we never see David Chuddy again. I don't think my heart can take it. I don't think we can be able to take dealing with Chuddy. You know, the guy's hilarious. You know, he's an extortionist. Anyway, but this was a very fun episode, man. Let me know if you enjoyed it, if you like any of the exchanges that were made, and like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for your time. Send cash via the Cash App. Subscribe via Subscribe Star if that makes you more comfortable. Anyway, help the channel grow. Thank you guys for your time. And I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.